I'm Aja Marcato. I'm from the Organization for Bat Conservation, and this here is Coco. Coco is our Pteropus rodriguensis, or our Rodriguez fruit bat. So this bat is endangered. In the wild, we only have about 5,000 of these individuals left. They're from an island called the Isle of Rodrigues, and it's off of Madagascar, and it's part of the Mauritius island chain. So Coco came to us because she has some vision problems. Bats are not blind, but Coco here has a hard time seeing. She also has some wing damage that keeps her from foraging for herself. So we bring her breakfast in bed every morning, and she is now retired, but Coco used to go out to classrooms all over the United States to teach people about how awesome bats are and how important they are to different backyards, different environments. So Rodriguez fruit bats like this are super important to their environment because they're incredibly important pollinators and seed dispersers. So think about this. If you have a tree and they drop all of their seeds in one spot, then all those new trees have to compete with the old tree for light, for nutrients in the soil, and for rainwater. But if you have bats like this who are super messy eaters, if they eat their fruit, and they smush it up in their mouths, and they drop those seeds as they fly, then a lot of those species of fruits and flowers get replanted, and it helps with our deforestation issues. So on the island of Rodrigues, many species depend on these bats in order to replant and to reproduce. So without them, there would be a cascade of plants that go extinct. So many of the local flora will go extinct without these animals. In the 1970s, this species was down to about 75 individuals, one of the most critically endangered species ever. Right now, according to CITES, or the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, they are CITES 2, which means that they're critically endangered, mostly because of habitat loss, because of large cyclones that come in and sweep these individuals out to sea, and also for those heavy winds and cyclones, they actually sweep out a whole bunch of fruit and leaves out to sea. And so there not only are there roosts getting, a roost is where bats hang out, so not only are there roosts getting pummeled, but also their food. And so, so we do have a breeding program in the United States. There are many zoos who participate in helping to breed these guys in captivity. They can live into their 30s in captivity. They usually have pups every 9 months. This species is incredibly social. They do well in captivity as long as they have friends. So they're super social. They spend a lot of time hanging out with each other in colonies. A colony is a group of bats that hang out together. They also spend a significant amount of time playing. This is pretty interesting. Animals in the wild will play in order to practice natural behaviors in the wild. So all of that wrestling that young bats do help them to build up strength in order to defend themselves in the wild and later dates. So they spend a lot of time playing and grooming each other. This species even has some very rare behavior, which is they have midwives. So when these bats give birth, they need to flip right side up, and they actually have another bat that that cradles them and helps to push through the pain and also to catch the baby in their wings as they pop out. So they have some incredible behaviors. This was the first bat that I ever worked with, and their behaviors are so fun to watch. Hi. So, they are very endangered, especially because of their habitat. 80% of these animals in the wild, 80% of them are found in one colony. So if anything happens to that colony, they're going to lose 80% of their population. And animals like this, Coco. So Coco does not use echolocation. She is a fruit bat. She relies on her eyes and her nose to find her way around. These bats can see red, and they can also identify ultraviolet light, and so that helps them to find their fruits in the trees. What we could do to help these animals is help support conservation efforts to bring back the rainforest in Mauritius, especially the Isle of Rodrigues. And we can all pay attention to climate change, and so that cyclones are not becoming more and more frequent.
Hey, Coco. So, beginning with questions.
Sure.
Aja, the first questions are, do bats carry disease?
Oh, that's a really good question. So just like any wild animal, bats can carry diseases just like anything else. So you have the same likelihood of a stray cat as a bat. Many people are afraid of rabies in bats. Here in the United States, rabies is found in less than half of 1% of all bats actually carry rabies, and because in order to be a flighted mammal, they have to have big hearts and a fast circulation system, so they actually pass away from any disease that they get very much more quickly than other animals. So whereas you don't come in contact with this nocturnal animal as much, there's a very, very small chance that you would contract anything from a bat. If you do find a bat in your backyard, definitely don't touch it, especially if you see them out in the daytime, because they are nocturnal. Anytime you see nocturnal animals out during the day, it probably means that they're sick. So anytime that you have a chance to interact with them, just leave them alone. You can call your U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to come and help you remove them if you need to, or find a local business that will exclude those animals or get them out of your house or out of your yard in a humane way. We definitely don't want to kill bats in our house. Our bats, especially in North America, are suffering from something called white nose syndrome. It's from a fungus that's invasive. It came over and it's actually hurting a lot of our bats. Yep, so Coco's actually going to the bathroom right now. As you can probably see, bats, because they are flighted mammals, they can't carry around any extra weight, so they actually go to the bathroom every 15 minutes in order to eliminate that extra weight. So anytime we show bats for more than 10 minutes, you're going to see their natural behavior. Now, usually they would flip right side up in order to go to the bathroom, but I have her little toes here, so unfortunately we got a little on her belly. But typically they use these long thumbs. So their wings are made from their their fingers. I don't know if you could see that. Oh, perfectly timed, Coco. So she has 4 fingers, and in between the fingers they have this patagia, or skin membrane. Now if you want to feel what it feels like, it looks a little leathery, but if you touch your eyelid, that's very similar to what a bat wing feels like. And so they do have the 4 fingers inside their wings, but they do have these thumbs exposed, and that helps them to climb in trees, which is where they live. It also helps them to grab onto the fruit that they're eating. These bats typically eat figs, tamarind, mangoes, definitely. So if you like mangoes, these bats are one of the main pollinators of mangoes in their area.
Go for it.
How many babies do bats normally have?
Oh, sure. So it depends on the species. Usually they have 1 or 2 pups, which is what we call baby bats, 1 or 2 pups a year. For these guys, they have a baby every 9 months-ish. And they give birth to babies about, depending on the species, about 1/3 of their body size. So they can't really have too many babies at once, otherwise they would have to fly around with a lot of weight. So imagine giving birth to a 3-year-old and putting that 3-year-old under your arm and trying to fly around with it. So they're very limited to how many babies that they have, and so when they are critically endangered, like this species right here, it's hard to get their populations back up because of that slow gestation period and because of the limitations on their size.
Why do they hang upside down?
Well, that's a super good question. So we get that question all the time, actually. So bats hang upside down because the way that their body is, they have very small back legs and these big wings. And it's really difficult for them to do a push-up off the ground with their body shape and size and anatomy. So they can't really do a push-up and get off the ground quickly to get away from predators or to chase their prey. So they hang upside down because all they have to do is let go with their toes, and they're already mid-flight. They're already in air. This does not affect they never get head rushes like we would. They're too small for actually gravity to take effect. Think about when you were kids and you hung upside down. You know, that didn't really bother you so much when you're this big, but as we get to be older adults, we don't really hang upside down all that much because the bigger that you get, the more gravity has effect. And so, so it doesn't bother them. They do have this really cool anatomical feature in their legs. They have this locking mechanism in their tendons. So usually when we have to make a fist, we have to actively make a fist with our hand. But they actively have to open their feet. So when they're hanging, they'll hang forever. They don't have to think about it. It's a passive activity, so they don't have to spend any energy hanging on with their feet. And then so all they have to do is when they do want to fly, they actively open their foot and they're already mid-flight. That tendon is so efficient that even when bats pass away, if nothing touches the bat, they actually just stay hanging until something or somebody touches them. So that's how good. So we have found mummified bats in some caves that haven't been touched in hundreds of years, and they're still actually hanging because that tendon is so works so well for them.
Where does that particular species of bat live, Coco?
Oh yeah, so Coco is from an island called the Isle of Rodrigues. It's part of the Mauritius Island that's east of Madagascar. So Madagascar is a big island off the east coast of Africa, and then if you keep going east off of Madagascar, then you get to this island chain called Mauritius, and that's where you find these bats.
How would someone get into working with endangered animals?
Oh, sure. Oh, that's a really good question. In order to get involved in endangered animals, you would usually need a degree in something like biology, conservation management, population ecology. Any of those studies will help you to get into the field, especially when you're taking classes that teach you how to monitor and measure populations, either through genetics or through observation. That really helps because then you can see the population decrease or increase over time. So anything like that. Also, just getting involved in your local conservation efforts. So we have volunteers that come here all the time, and they help us out so that we can do more and more for the bats. So that would really help if you're already too far in your career for a career change. You can always just volunteer, especially for nonprofits like us. We definitely depend on our volunteers and our interns to help us with everyday operations. So in order to reach more people, travel more with the bats, take care of them, give them better care, we do rely on our community to support us in that way. So that's also a good way to get started in the field. These are great questions. Thank you so much.
Do these bats form cliques, and do they get territorial?
100%. So bats are incredibly social. They spend a lot of time grooming each other. Bats love to snuggle, something that you won't really read in any textbook. They do interact a lot with each other. And so they do, so the cliques that we talk about, they're part of their colony. We call bats a colony. This specific species live in harems, so there's usually 1 male and 8 females. And there is a pecking order for sure. Males that are not as popular or strong or big, they hang out together in kind of their bachelor pad, a little bit separate from the rest of the colony. But they do have a pecking order. The bigger, cooler bats always eat first. They always get the best spot in the tree, and then the males especially will use an oil that's secreted from their chin and their neck, and they'll rub it all over their favorite branch, and that kind of tells the other bats that this is their branch. This is mine. Don't roost here. This is my bed. I sleep here. And so they do communicate in many different ways, either an auditory protest, or by secreting that individual scent that they have. So.
How old is Coco, and how did she end up living there with us?
Oh, I think Coco, her history, I don't know that answer. I think she's a bit older. I think she might be 22, but I'm guessing. These bats can live up to 30 years old in captivity. And so I would have to review, Coco's been here longer than me, so I would actually have to go into her records and see where we got her from. But all of our animals here at OBC, or the Organization for Bat Conservation, they all come to us because they're either orphaned, unwanted, they've been bullied by their old colonies, the zoo that they were at ran out of space. One of our bats has really bad allergies and used to be part of a much bigger colony, and so he needs a lot of individual attention. He needs to get his baby Benadryl twice a day, and so we have the facility here to take care of bats that need that extra special care. We bring them breakfast in bed every morning. We make sure that they all individually eat, and so all of our animals came to us because they didn't have anywhere else to go, or they were on their last limb, or they weren't getting along with where they were, where they used to be. So yeah, all of our animals only come to us as a sanctuary. So we only take in bats that absolutely need another home to go to. Yep.
What type of fruit do they eat?
Oh, that's a really good question. So here at the OBC, we feed them a variety of fruit. They have bananas and apples and watermelon and cantaloupe, and today they got papaya that looks really awesome. And so they get all of this fruit. But in the wild, they usually eat mangoes and tamarind, which tamarind is that really strong tasting fruit. It comes in a pod, and it's a huge part of Southeast Asian and some African cultures use it a lot in their recipes. It's got like a really earthy, fruity flavor, and it gives a bright red or magenta color almost to the food that it's in. And so a lot of people rely on these guys to pollinate those plants and to spread those seeds so that they can have that as a food source as well.
Which states are the ones affected by white nose syndrome?
Oh, that's a really good question. So actually, white nose has been spreading since 2006. We first found it in a New York cave in upstate New York, and it has spread rapidly over the United States. Unfortunately, because we move around so much and because bats interact with each other so much, it has spread all the way out to Washington State and all the way down to about Tennessee. I think we might have found it just in Texas, but they're checking on that. So it's almost throughout the entire United States. The southern states don't get affected as much because they have less hibernating species, less hibernating bats. White nose syndrome only affects bats that hibernate because it wakes them up from hibernation. It's like having athlete's foot on your nose and your wings, right, or your arms, as the case may be. And so it gets super itchy, and they wake up too frequently and too early from hibernation. So it only affects cave-dwelling hibernating bats, and so that's usually all across the northern parts of the United States and Canada, not so much the southern states.
Is it harmful to touch bat wings, similar to butterflies?
Oh, interesting. No, it's not. It is pretty thin skin, and so sometimes when they have very, very sharp nails, they have to be careful interacting with each other so that they don't scratch each other. But as far as just touching it, butterfly wings have a dust on them that help them to fly, and so when we touch them with the oils on our finger, we take that dust off. And so, it adds the oils that make it heavier on their wings. Because these guys are mammals, and because their skin is just like our skin, it has no effect unless we make sure that we're all vaccinated, and we make sure that we wash our hands before we touch the animals. But for the most part, just touching the wing won't do any damage. It's really just skin like your eyelid, so it's not as fragile as it looks.
Do bats have a call? How do they communicate with each other?
Oh, Really good question. So a lot of our insect-eating bats are echolocating bats, so they use echolocation to find their way around and also to interact with each other. These fruit bats are non-echolocating, so they use an audible sound. And each species has a different squawk or chirping or song, I guess you could call them. So if you listen to our cameras at night, explore.org cameras at night, you can hear that squawk, especially for our straw-colored fruit bats. They make almost like a duck sound. It's like meh. And this is how they communicate with each other. So they and you could see them when somebody's wiggling and they're trying to sleep. They'll go, meh, meh, you know, and they'll kind of elbow each other. And so they do have this audible sound. And then they have a different kind of a call when we come back from programs and we put them back with their friends in their bedroom. You can hear an anticipatory kind of a sound that they make, and so they all bum rush whoever just got back and smell them, and we're like, where were you? What kind of kids were you teaching today? And things like that. And so they do have different audible sounds for different situations. Yeah, it's fun to listen to.
Can you make that sound again, Asia? That was pretty good.
No, I'm kidding. It's like a sound, and it gets very loud. And so, if you can imagine in the wild, some of not this species right here, but some species are in colonies of tens to hundreds of thousands. So if you imagine that squawking over your head as they migrate, it's quite a sound.
I think we have time for one more question.
Sure.
Do bats get fleas?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yes, so there are many microorganisms that live on bats, and there are actually some people that study only their parasites. So they do have fleas, and they have bat fleas and bat flies and a couple other species. And what's interesting is that all of those parasites are actually unique to the species. So as you look at phylogenetic trees or how the family tree of bats have evolved over time, you can also track the same thing with the insects that you find on them, the parasites. You can make trees that almost look the same, and so they have evolved with the bat species. So as there's speciation in the bat species, there's speciation in the parasites that also live in their fur. Really cool, yeah. Thanks, that was a good question. So Coco here, she's living out her days with us. We do spoil her a little bit because she is retired. She gets tons and tons of fruit salad every day. We also hang her fruit so that she can forage in a little bit different way. Because she is retired, it's very important to supply a Coco with enrichment. So we hang something new in her bedroom every day, so she gets something a little different to explore, a little something different to smell or taste, and so that keeps her stimulated. Having a bad eyesight, we do have to be careful about what we supply her with so that it doesn't make her nervous at all. But usually we use a couple different things and rotate it, and so she's a pretty happy bat. We have keepers that come in every morning at 6 o'clock and make pounds and pounds of fruit salad for our bats. A bat like this can eat half of their weight in fruit every single day. So Coco I think she used to be a part of a breeding program, but now she's too old, so she's come out to us to retire. So she's not, so she doesn't have to have babies anymore. But there are SSP or species continuation programs across AZA accredited facilities and other facilities that help with breeding them so that they do not go extinct. Thank you so much for listening and all those great questions. If you would like to sponsor Coco, you can always go to our website at batconservation.org. All the proceeds go right to our animal care funds, so it helps to, when you sponsor an ambassador animal like this, it goes right to their food and their enclosures and their medical care. So Coco says thanks. She doesn't get a lot of visitors these days, so it's nice that she got out and gets to make some friends today. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope you enjoyed meeting our Coco. She's got a special place in all of our hearts.
Happy Endangered Species Day, everyone.